There are all sorts of networks in a school environment. The newest, online social networks, have significant implications for learning and education. This video report looks at technology integration from 3 different perspectives.
Go into where we are working with them to use technology in effective ways. There are definitely elements of, before technology even existed. And teachers like to start to use technology by keeping their frameworks the same. So if students, if we want students to publish to a blog, the teacher may want the students to still handwrite everything, right, which is also valuable because the tests everyone handwrites. Right. So it's still great for students to work on their handwriting and work on writing their ideas out, but also we want them to learn, the affordances of the computer and how great it is to publish. So we want the teachers to know both. The approach that we use is to use a blog for students to publish work. And it's sort of a way to encourage them to work towards having a final product. So their work is published to the class blog when they feel really good about it.
The thing we started with blogging was with the yearbook. I mean, not the yearbook, the school newspaper. So we set up a blogging site, and then they actually elected a editor for the blog. People applied, and they had an editor so that the kids would post blog posts, and the editors would look at it, and then we, the teachers, would look at it, and then we would post it. There was resistance from the administration around going public with the site, really concerned about making sure there's oversight, that things wouldn't get published that would end up coming back to sort of bite us. So we didn't really go public with that.
The North London Collaborative Classroom utilizes blogs in a variety of ways. Not only do teachers maintain their own blogs to communicate with parents and students, but students utilize ClassBlogMeister to maintain their own blog. This student blog talks about a trip to Disney World. They also embed their own podcasts within the blog. The class maintains a list of other classroom blog sites that they communicate with around the world. The students use blogs to learn about literacy, as well as to learn proper netiquette. They love having their own blog sites and couldn't wait to continue posting to them during the summer.
Student taught at the Hewitt School, which was an independent school, definitely used wikis. The students were doing, creating collaborative documents from wikis. Like, I'm trying to think of a specific example, but it was more like ideas about computers and networking that they were putting together and post on a wiki. So it was more in the technology class. I'm not so sure if it was used outside of technology class. Yeah, they were used.
And so are they, are students using Hewitt or only the teachers?
Oh yes, students were at that school. So that was an independent. I haven't seen a wiki used at a public school, but if you go online, there's so many examples of teachers doing work with wikis. I personally just haven't seen it.
We used Wikispaces a lot. I had teachers that did some research projects using it, so the kids all contributed, and then they did stuff about mythological figures, and then they used the wiki. They each did research, contributed to the wiki, and then they used the wiki to study from for the exam. When I was leaving, I had a lot of teachers setting up Wikispaces for their classroom websites. So I think next year, that was really, we had paid for a site, but really when we looked at Wikispaces and what it offered, the ability to do discussion, the ability for people to follow the different pages pretty easily so that parents could follow updates, they could have pages for homework, they had set up pages for class notes, they could feed their Delicious links to a page, they could feed YouTube, they could feed Google Docs and presentations. So it really served as a good container for a lot of information and sharing.
One way that North London Collaborative is making use of wikis is through something they call Classroom Book Talk. They love working on projects with other children, and the Book Talk wiki allows them to share and review books of different genres with students around the world who also contribute to it. The wiki is hosted on Wikispaces, and this page shows fantasy books. For example, if you choose the Spiderwick Chronicles, you'll learn that the Field Guide is the first book in the series. You can also contribute to this review by using VoiceThread.
Moodle is definitely a lot of, and I think it's a great tool. It's not necessarily social networking, but it is a way of creating networks within a classroom, and a way of, it definitely is. A lot of schools using Google Docs, which is a great solution, not necessarily social networking, but it does have that online collaboration element, which is really great. So, I mean, I haven't seen this, but it opens up so many possibilities for networking in terms of kids collaborating from different schools over, to create a writing sample or something. I've seen a lot of Google Docs. I haven't worked with people using them, but I see there's a lot of potential there.
The biggest success I had was using social networks in my English classes. We had closed networks, but the kids were able to connect with kids in the other classes. So if it was a teacher teaching sophomore level 2 English and they had 3 classes, all 3 classes were part of the same network. So they were able to communicate with each other in ways that they never had before. I would say one of the biggest successes was the conversations around Huck Finn, especially around issues of racism and things like that. The kids were able to talk about things that they would not have done face-to-face. And then they were able to follow up face-to-face in the classroom. But it started the conversation, and kids who wouldn't have said anything normally spoke up and shared their thoughts. I did have some really nice success with podcasting. In my previous job, I did a lot of stuff with podcasting when I was working K-8. We did a number of book reviews. That was really successful. They loved it, and it became sort of a database for looking at books and deciding what to read, so that was a real success. And then last year I had a teacher who did a series of vignettes with the kids, personal stories that they recorded and then added music and sound effects, and this was in one of her lowest level classes, and the things they wrote and recorded were amazing. Just the level of thinking and writing, and it was fascinating. It was amazing to see them really grow as writers, because what they wrote and what they said were not necessarily the same. So they sort of wrote it, but as they read it aloud, they transformed the writing. And what it became was so much better than it had been when it was written down.
North London Collaborative is also progressive in their use of podcasts. Listen to this snippet from a group of students.
This week, our parents came in to see our technology project for American Education Week. We showed them our digital stories, wikis, blogs, and our class websites. We use a lot of technology in our class.
Last week, we talked with Mrs. Derb, who lives in Maryland. We talked about our favorite books. We did a web conference and used a web camera. There were many books that the kids knew and didn't know. Some of these were mystery and fantasy books.
We're reading fantasy books in reading groups. My group is reading the book Bunnicula. Please comment on my blog page if you've read the book Bunnicula.
Last week we started reading the book The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This book genre is fantasy. It's about 4 kids who discover this magical world with the eternal winter ruled by an evil queen.
North London Collaborative also uses Skype to communicate with other classrooms across the country, where students share their hopes and dreams and also work collaboratively on projects.